The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the small rural clinic as Dr. Maria Santos finished her evening rounds. At 32, she had chosen to practice in this remote mountain community rather than pursue the lucrative opportunities available in major cities. The clinic served a population that often couldn't afford specialized medical care, and Maria found deep satisfaction in being the primary healthcare provider for families who had lived in these hills for generations. She was reviewing patient charts when the automatic doors burst open and 4 men in dark suits rushed in, carrying an unconscious man between them. The scene was surreal in the quiet clinic. These men looked like they belonged in a corporate boardroom or security detail, rather than the rural medical facility that usually saw farmers, loggers, and their families. "We need a doctor immediately," one of the suited men said urgently. "He collapsed during a business meeting in town." Maria quickly assessed the situation, her medical training taking over despite the unusual circumstances. The patient appeared to be in his mid-30s, well-dressed in an expensive suit and showing signs of severe dehydration and exhaustion. "Get him into examination room 2, Maria directed, leading the way. "What's his name and medical history?" The men exchanged glances before one answered, "His name is David. We don't have his medical records with us." Maria noticed their evasiveness, but focused on her patient. David was unconscious, his breathing shallow, with a rapid pulse and elevated temperature. She immediately started an IV for fluids and began running diagnostic tests. "How long has he been working without proper rest?" Maria asked as she monitored his vital signs. "He's been in meetings for 18 hours straight. Hasn't eaten since yesterday morning." Maria frowned at this information. What kind of business meeting requires someone to work themselves into medical collapse? The suited men remained uncomfortably silent, clearly reluctant to provide details about their employer's activities. As Maria worked to stabilize her patient, she couldn't help but notice the quality of his clothing and the expensive watch on his wrist. The men accompanying him carried themselves with the bearing of professional security, and their concern seemed both professional and personal. "Is he going to be all right?" one of them asked as Maria adjusted the IV drip. "He will be, but he needs rest and proper nutrition. This level of exhaustion and dehydration could have been dangerous if you hadn't brought him in when you did." Over the next hour, David slowly regained consciousness. When he opened his eyes, Maria was checking his blood pressure, her focus entirely on his medical condition rather than his identity. "Where am I?" David asked weakly. "Mountain View Clinic." "You collapsed from exhaustion and dehydration. I'm Dr. Santos." David looked around the small but well-equipped room, clearly surprised by his surroundings. "A rural clinic?" "The best medical care within 50 miles, Maria replied matter-of-factly. "Your associates brought you here when you lost consciousness." As David became more alert, Maria noticed his surprise at being treated like any other patient. She took his medical history, asked about his symptoms, and explained his treatment plan with the same thorough care she provided to every patient. "Dr. Santos, do you know who I am?" David asked, curiously. Maria looked at him directly. "You're my patient. That's all I need to know to provide you with good medical care." David seemed taken aback by her response. "You really don't recognize me?" "Should I? Are you a previous patient?" "No, it's just most people know my name." Maria shrugged. "I don't follow celebrity gossip or business news. I'm more concerned with your blood pressure than your bank account." Over the next few hours, as David's condition stabilized, Maria found herself in conversation with a man who seemed both relieved and intrigued by her lack of recognition. He asked thoughtful questions about her work at the clinic and her decision to practice in a rural area. "What made you choose this location?" David asked as Maria checked his IV. "These communities are medically underserved. People here work hard physical jobs, often without adequate health care access. They deserve the same quality medical care available in cities. That must be financially challenging." "It is. But medicine isn't supposed to be just about profit. It's about healing people who need help." David was quiet for a moment, studying her face. You could probably make 10 times as much money in a private practice in Los Angeles. Money doesn't motivate me the way helping people does. These families trust me with their health and their children's health. That's worth more than any salary. As the evening progressed, David's security team became increasingly restless about staying in one location. But David insisted on following Dr. Santos's medical recommendations completely. "Sir, we really should get you back to the city," one of them urged quietly. "I'm following my doctor's orders," David replied firmly. "Dr. Santos says I need to rest and recover properly." Maria overheard this exchange and approached David's bedside. "David, your associates seem anxious about something. Is there anything I should know that might affect your treatment?" David considered his response carefully. "Dr. Santos, what I do for work sometimes involves high-pressure situations and public attention. My colleagues are concerned about privacy and security. Are you in some kind of legal trouble? Because I'm obligated to report certain injuries." "No, nothing illegal. I run a technology company, and sometimes business dealings require discretion." Maria nodded, accepting his explanation without pressing for details. "Well, as your doctor, I'm prescribing complete rest for the next 24 hours, regular meals, and no business meetings until your body recovers from this exhaustion." "You're serious about the no meetings?" "Completely serious. You pushed your body past its limits. If you don't address the underlying stress and overwork, this will happen again." David found himself in the unusual position of being ordered around by someone who had no idea of his wealth or influence, and he discovered he liked the experience more than he expected. The next morning, David woke feeling significantly better, but reluctant to leave the clinic. Maria had checked on him several times during the night, treating him with the same professional care and personal warmth she showed every patient. "Dr. Santos, I want to ask you something," David said as she reviewed his discharge instructions. "What's that?" "Would you have dinner with me tonight? Not as a patient, but as someone who appreciates good company and conversation." Maria looked surprised by the invitation. "David, I don't usually socialize with patients. What if I told you I'd like to learn more about your work here? I'm interested in healthcare access in rural communities." Maria studied his face, seeing genuine interest rather than romantic pursuit. "Are you thinking about this from a business perspective?" "I'm thinking about it from a human perspective. You showed me yesterday that there are people who choose service over profit, and I'd like to understand that better." 6 months later, David had become a regular presence in the mountain community, not as a wealthy CEO, but as someone who had learned to value the slower pace and genuine connections possible in rural life. His technology company had established a telemedicine program that connected rural clinics like Maria's with specialists in major cities, expanding healthcare access across underserved regions. "Maria," David said one evening as they walked through the town after dinner, "I need to tell you something about my work. I figured you were more than just a regular business owner when your security team started accompanying you everywhere." David smiled. "You really didn't know who I was that night? I looked you up after you kept visiting." David Chen, CEO of Chen Technologies, estimated net worth in the hundreds of millions. Maria paused. "What I can't figure out is why someone with your resources chooses to spend time in a town with one stoplight. Because in your clinic, for the first time in years, I was treated like a human being instead of a bank account or a business opportunity." Maria understood that David's collapse had brought him not just medical treatment, but a reminder of what mattered beyond wealth and success. His continued presence in the community wasn't about charity or tax benefits. It was about finding meaning and connection in a life that had become consumed by business obligations. "David, what you've done with the telemedicine program has helped hundreds of patients get care they couldn't afford to travel for. What you do every day helps people in ways that can't be measured in quarterly reports. You saved my life that night. But more than that, you reminded me what my life should be for." Maria realized that sometimes the most important patients are the ones who teach us as much as we heal them. David's mysterious arrival had led not just to his physical recovery, but to a partnership that brought resources and technology to communities that needed both. The millionaire who had collapsed from exhaustion had found something in the rural clinic that no amount of money could buy: genuine care from someone who valued his humanity over his net worth.